so I think this is really cool what you are seeing. And, see, this is why we make the best researchers, because you're there, you're living with your horse, you're noticing every little thing, you know. Okay, so just let me do an introduction here. Okay, well, it is June 3rd, 2025, and so we're starting our hoof chat here. Right now, I'm talking to Tiffany, who earlier asked Tiffany, will you say again or repeat what we were talking about earlier, what you asked?
I asked the group if there is a direct correlation between a medial and or a lateral flare and the bulbs spinning in or spooling in and or down. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And I said, and that's what I said. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good observation. And so then we got this thing started. So I asked Tiffany if there's anything about on her horse that she wanted to discuss. And of course, what she started to say was in direct connection to the question she asked. Because the explanation I gave her was that when the heel is trimmed out and it's either the foot wants to stand up, so it's going to spool that bulb in, or else if it can't stand up and it's just being pulled down and forward, it the inner foot, the bulb pushes all that anatomy in front of it forward and often will crush the heel upward. But as it does so, because the capsule is in reality a separate entity, okay, it will push that wall forward and bulge it out. Because another thing too that I didn't tell you was that uh, uh, the heel buttresses, when they are in their correct place, okay, they stabilize that hoof wall. And they actually keep it from bulging out or flaring out because they're solid and they're stable, and therefore combined with the frog stay, all of the back of the foot supporting the back of the foot where it's supposed to be in its position, then they stabilize that. That capsule is only a shell. Or we'll look at this here. Oops. Oops. There we go. It's only a shell, like so. And so if the heel here and the bulb, which is supposed to be up here, this one shrunk up. If it gets pulled down, well, then it's going to push the side out like that. See? So so whatever happens, this is only meant to be a certain way. Just a minute. I got a couple other ones here. Got a bucket of bones here. Just a minute. Hold on. Okay, let's get some of this stuff out here. Okay, so here's just capsules, Just a second. I'll turn on this light. Ah, looky there. We got some light on the situation. Hold on. Okay, so just a second. Let me take this. Boy, I don't know if I'm going to get that out of there or not. Just a second. Trying to get this horseshoe out of here. Okay, so I put that horseshoe in there because I split the frog there. Split the frog. But it would have been, otherwise it might have contracted too much, like this one did when it dried out. See the difference there? So these two horses here, two mares, were pretty much the same size. Let's move some stuff. Um, hold on, I gotta move some stuff. I got too much stuff. Okay, so these two mirrors ultimately would have been pretty much the same size, but maybe not. I don't know. Well, anyway, this foot was contracted real bad, but what I did was I split the frog down the center and then I put that in there so that when it dried out, it would stay separated like that. Just a minute. Huh, that worked pretty good. Okay, um so this is just a shell, right? And so it's got a foot that goes in it like so. I don't know if I can fit that foot in there. Probably not. It's too big. Um, but anyway, there's a foot that fits in it. I actually got the foot. Just a minute. This this was the foot. I let it dry out and look, it turned into rawhide. Let's see if that foot will fit in there. Yeah, probably not with it dried out. Yeah. Once I get it in, I'll never get it out. Just a minute. No, I can't fit it back in. Plus, that one stinks pretty darn bad, I've got to tell you. But anyway, as you see, it's just a shell that fits on the foot. And so when the heels are incorrectly trimmed, they're supposed to be up like this and they get pulled down like so. Well, when this wall gets pulled down, it is going to make the side, it's going to get pulled down and pushed forward, and it will make the side flare out like so. Oh, let me get rid of this cord. Okay, so um, the object that we want to do is grow the heel back in, and as it's growing in, it should pull back, and as it pulls back, the side eventually should go back in like that, like that. As the heel here that got pushed forward, that pulled this side out like so in a bulge, okay, as all this comes back and grows in and stands up, that should come back in. All right, so that's the thing. That's the thing we got to remember is that this is just a shell. So we have to think of hoof distortion in terms of uh, how the shell gets moved on the foot. How when you move one thing, it's going to move everything else. Like Tiffany was talking about how it's kind of like Rubik's Cube. So you move one part and it's going to change the whole setup. So, okay. So anyway, so Tiffany, now let's go back to what I asked you about. If there was anything about your horse you wanted to discuss, and right away you went back to this subject, and so tell the people what you have been observing on your own horse. And of course, again, we're talking about the bulb of the heel. This is not a very good bulb. Well, let's use one of these instead. The bulb of the heel, one being pulled down. And actually, if you look at this foot here, this bulb is pulled down more than this bulb. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get this light in here. Okay, so you can see that this bulb is pulled under more than this bulb. And what's interesting is it also pushed this side of the foot out further that way. So, okay. Okay, Tiffany, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so what I observed, if you're on the continuing saga of each Hoof Week chat, last week I presented Joaquin's left hind because the periopal skin was tearing. Um, and it was scary because,
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. So, I've been noticing that with that scary tearing, his bulbs have been lifting and coming more perky. They're more perky bulbs. And I'm assuming into the more,
Sorry.
no, no, it was meant to be funny. So thank you for laughing. Um, so I've noticed that I'm hoping that this means that his bulbs are sliding into the anatomically correct position.
Yeah.
Um, and so with that, the other side is starting to tear where there was a flare. And I've noticed that there has been a decrease in the flare since his bulb is moving up. Have I articulated that in a comprehensive way?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's yeah, that's awesome that you have noticed that. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you're noticing something that people never notice,
Well,
that it's taken us years to figure out what's even going on, you know?
Well, thank you for giving me the space because I've been studying not just Joaquin, but other people's posts in the Facebook group. And then I've noticed that there's like a theme with flares and these
Hmm.
pools. So anyway, I'm with him now. I've just took some dirty pictures of his feet so you can see what the
Yeah.
tear looks like and how the flare is lessening.
Okay.
Um, if you're interested. Otherwise, we can move
Yeah, I
on.
am. No, no, I'm interested. I see, this is really important because those bulbs, the bulb would not move up, the bulb would not move if it wasn't already being pulled up and also be just on its own, the way it's built, it's supposed to be in a specific position, just like the nose on your face. Okay. But the incorrect wear or trimming of the capsule will pull the bulb down as the heel is lowered, you know? So it's important to know all this stuff because this is the main part of hoof distortion that we're talking about, the heels, because the bulb is a part of the whole heel apparatus, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
I'm having a hard time envisioning what this is doing to the one side because for people who are listening, it's on Joaquin, it's just one bulb that's pulled with one flare, so not both sides are flared. But
uh-huh.
it's hard for me to imagine what internally is happening on that inside, um, so I can support the rebounding. That making I'm going to stop asking if that makes sense, and if it doesn't make sense, you'll ask. How about that?
Yeah, if it don't, yeah, I will.
Okay.
Right now I'm trying to get into Facebook because this thing just chooses to not remember my passwords, and I'm wondering what the heck that's about.
So while you're looking at Facebook, I'm going to ask another question because
Okay.
I'm confused how to support it. So it looks like the bulb that's pulled under with the flare is shorter, but it's not. It's just run more forward. So I'm curious, um, are we meant to trim that flare out or lower it or let it grow and then because last week it was someone else's horse, I forget, and she was in the Netherlands, I think, where there was a slight twist in the capsule.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so to me, it's all connected. I just don't know how to put the string through it
Yeah.
to weave it. But I'm curious when the heel is run forward, it looks shorter, but it's actually longer than the more
Yeah.
upright side. So do I take that longer run forward heel, do I trim it or do I let it grow and then maybe it will balance out the hoof so that it can start to kick back?
Yeah, kind of what we've been doing is lowering the other heel
Okay,
like a little to
a little
because
touch.
because even though it looks lower, it actually makes that side of the foot higher,
Yeah, correct.
you know? Or it makes it, no, no, no. It makes it look higher when it's actually trimmed out and lower. And so
Yes.
what happens is it looks higher, so you keep trimming it down and trimming it down and trimming it down. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and more run
Okay.
forward.
I think I'm going to need you to make that a visual.
Okay.
Okay.
I know it's a brain killer,
Twister,
that
it's like
one,
a tongue twister for my
you
brain.
know. Okay, so let's look here. Oh, wow. Yeah, you can see that other side pretty much wants to come up too. Oh,
Totally.
here, I need to share. Just a minute. Oh, that's interesting. Let's see here. Okay, get on the Zoom, on the share. Okay. Okay, so this side here used to be pulled down like that side there. That side is pulled down, just in case you didn't know, and stuff. You can see it, and it is pushing this side out here a little. See that? Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello?
Sorry, I muted myself and I was sending
Oh,
you a more updated picture. Um, Let me repeat that. I'm sorry.
see, okay, this side is still pulled down. This
Yes, it
side
is.
is pulled down, but this is the side that tore, right?
Yes, now the other side is tearing. You can see it, even though it's
Yeah,
dry. Yes.
yeah. How cool is that? So you could probably go in there and trim some of that out right there. Um,
Uh,
yeah, that was that scary.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
Only because
sorry.
yesterday, last week's homework was to remove the flap, and I did, and it bled, and then I was like, "Oh, abort,
Oh,
abort, abort."
well, did he jump
No, I
away?
did. Again, this is more me. Like,
Okay,
he's super chill. He's probably like, "Can you just get it off?" And I was like, "Oh
so
God."
so he probably didn't even feel it, you
Yes.
know, and stuff. Um, So yeah, because he'd be growing new skin under there. So his skin is new skin and kind of close. But what you're gonna see here, just a minute. Let me take a copy of that. Save that image.
So to your point, yes, that side it definitely still has a flare, but my point is it's significantly less than
Oh
what it was
yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah. Well, and see, I see a kind of a little flare here on this side
You are
because
correct.
see right there and stuff. So let's see, share.
I sent you a soul view. That's why I was on deleting
Okay,
that.
so. You're seeing actually more heel buttress come in here. Let me show you here. Just a minute here. Okay, so here's okay, look how this heel goes down like that, right to there, and then it goes down like this. See that? Does that look right?
Correct.
Okay, and it does the same thing over here too. It's going down like this to right about here, and then it's going down right here. So so this part here is the back of the heel buttress, and eventually you're going to want this part to grow up like this.
Hmm.
See there?
Hmm.
So this is all heel buttress that's been adding to and coming back gradually.
Yes.
Because as the back of the foot unrolls, little bits grow. See? So at some point, his heels were here. And then this part started growing in. And now you actually have this is the real buttress right here. And
Well, I'm really
so,
happy to hear that.
yeah. And so all of this will grow up like so eventually so that it's all level in here. Let me undo that just a minute. So that because I see, look here where your wall is here. See that?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's going to grow up here. Your bar is going to be down here. And I'm not drawing it very good, but it'll be like this. This is the heel buttress here. This has to, this little piece here is going to grow up here.
I'll do my best to support that.
Okay. And then of course you're going to see your bar in here. So, okay. Well, that is awesome. Okay. And so, yeah, so then just keep working on this area here, opening it up. You haven't used your Proxon on him yet, have you?
No, but I'm getting better with the knife,
Okay. Well,
minus
that's
the bloody
good.
parts.
That's good
Yeah.
and stuff. And so, the first times you do it, you don't even really have to touch his foot. You just, turn it on and zoom it around a little
Mhm.
there and just get him used to it. Have you had it on around him at all yet?
Yes, we're good at that. He's chill. It's me. I will take, I don't feel comfortable. I need to practice on a piece of wood. I need to practice on something, not him.
Okay. Okay, because then you'll see that with that little flap disc, it
Hmm.
don't take off much. It's just like sandpaper. So
Hmm.
what you do is get you some pieces of board and just put some marker, like take your marker and like
Hmm.
put around the edges or something, and then just practice beveling off the edges
Okay.
or taking out markers of the pencil so that and the marker so that you can see that it's not drastic.
I appreciate that technique because when you a couple weeks ago mentioned like when you use a knife, you should envision yourself like peeling a potato, and that changed for me,
Oh,
which gave me
good.
more accuracy. So it was a
Okay.
comment for somebody else, but I took it and I was like, oh, I was trying to take off chunks, and I should be doing little slivers. So with
Yeah.
that correct, then I feel more confident and have been doing better work because of that,
Okay.
minus
Well, good deal.
the bloody part.
And like right here, okay, you can see his bulbs want to come up now. Now, see, people need to understand that you could unbind the heels and the cartilages, but the frog could still be bound under because these are all kind of independent parts. The frog and all this is independent from the two heels. And so the frog itself can be bound under the foot while the two cartilages and bulbs are up. And then what you'll see is see this area here, how it's pulled
Mhm.
down. Okay. So anyway, people need to remember that. And sometimes what you'll see too is you'll see very pronounced cartilages with kind of a uh it's kind of concavish in here because of how the cartilages are up and the frog, the center of the foot is sucked down. Um,
Well, I'm curious because I understand in the correct anatomy, there's supposed to be a frog stay between those two bulbs where you just drew. But
yeah.
how, where am I going from here? There's no
Okay.
space.
Well, your frog is holding this whole area. This here, this frog here,
Hmm.
which you can barely, it's kind of funky. This part of the frog here is supposed to be like, okay, this hairline here is
Hmm.
supposed to go up like this.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so
How
you
did he get
see, well, because the frog probably it could be not necessarily that his heels were trimmed out, though that's always happened to these horses. But also when they're growing, a lot of times the frog does not exfoliate like it should, so that as the horse's foot is growing, it can't expand. Okay, so it gets held down under by old, dead, hard, petrified frog. And even if the frog isn't totally hard, dead, and petrified, um, the frog corium and of the foot itself that grows it has been pulled under or just never was allowed to release and come up. And so it's still, so your frog stays like in here. See, and
Mm.
it's binding that foot right where it's at. It's frog growth. The frog growth grows there and then holds the inner part of the foot right there. Um, let me see if I got something I can
I
give an
can verify
example.
that because when I use the knife on his frogs, that's the most difficult area, the
Yeah,
most stubborn area, where the other is towards the front are a little bit more rubbery and it's just bing bang boom. This is like a speed bump area for me.
yeah. And so ultimately, we have to learn um, how to, we're still learning a lot about trimming these frogs, one thing I learned was that I don't necessarily want to take everything out of the center where the frog stay is all at once because then the heels might contract. Okay. So what I do is if it's got a big and and of course, this is all still in the experimental stages of figuring out how to release these frogs. Um, but I'll tell you one thing. Once the real frog starts growing, man, it grows. It is totally different than what I ever had before. And so what I've been doing is just of course and this would probably be worse for you, Tiffany, than a scalpel, than a than a than a than a proxon,
Hmm.
because it can be kind of scary too. But I'll take a scalpel and I'll just make a slit about 2/8 of an inch deep right there. You can feel that frog stay, that
Hmm.
big chunk of frog that's up in there, up in here. And so I'll just make a slit right there so that when the horse walks, it will separate. And I've been doing that a lot. And what I noticed was, man, it really helped the frog expand and move just doing that, you know. Um, I'll show you some pictures here in a bit. But then I'll use the Proxon and get all that stuff off and down more. And then if they got moisture and that frog gets moisture, well, you saw what happened to your foot when it got moisture over here.
That's
See,
right.
and now you have this nice periopal band here. See,
Cool.
and you can see another one under here.
It's trying to form.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. It's kind of like when you have a flap of skin with other skin growing under it, like a
Hmm.
callus or something. Um, let's see here. So let's go look at the other pictures here. Okay, first before I do that, I want to show you this other deal here. Let's see. Stop share. Okay, so here's the inner foot right here. Um, and here's the frog. This is the frog. This is frog padding that grows from the frog. See the difference? This is permanent right here. This is part of the foot. It's the permanent part of the foot. And this is temporary, growing on and off. So everything about that capsule is growing on and from and on the foot and off the foot. And so uh rightfully, if a foot is right, that whole foot should be in a constant state of renewal. And so, okay, so this is off a horse that I trimmed for 8 months and I was trimming the heels out of him. And what I want you to see here is the coronary band. Okay, can you see how that coronary band dips down like this?
Yes.
Okay, well, it shouldn't have been like that. Okay, this part here should have been clear up here, like so. Let me see if I can do this again. Okay, there's coronary band. Should have been up like this, not dipping down like that. And so what you see here is it was pulling the cartilages down. This cartilage here would have been more up like that, like like so. And so it was pulling this horse. See, now I know from knowing enough about these feet now and knowing what is anatomically correct that this internal foot was deformed because of how I was trimming the horse. In trimming the heels down, it was pulling the whole back of the foot down. Well, what did that do? Okay, so you got your digital cushion in here. Look at my nice manicure job. Isn't that great? Um, I've been outside digging in the dirt. Um, so so it pulled these cartilages down, and this little area here should have been up here. See? And so what does it do when it pulls that down? Well, it pulls the frog that was up here, it pulls it down and starts shoving it under the foot. And then, so it's changing the position of this foot and of the frog. And then the frog grows from the changed position of the foot. And then that frog will hold that foot right there. And so the frog can't move. And so these these heels are independent and the frog is independent, even though it's all connected together. Um, hold on, because we're gonna look at something else here. Just a second. I'm gonna find something to set it on. Like, just a minute. Oh, here we go. An old t-shirt. So hold on. So we'll look at a fresher foot. Um, what did I do with it? Okay. So we got these. We will look at. I just need to put another glove on. Okay. Okay, one thing we can look at is this here. Just a second. Okay. So, okay, so this was a pretty good foot. Just a minute, I gotta get something else to work on this thing. Oh, nope, don't want to use that. Hold on. I need a towel.
Is this a front or a hind?
What?
Is this a front or a hind leg?
This is a front.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a front, and this was a really this horse had really good feet. Somehow she escaped having the farrier. Uh, she never had a barefoot trimmer, thank God. And she never had a farrier that totally believed in trimming the heels out. See how much heel she got there? And now I want you to look at this area of the frog up behind the foot. See the difference in what your horse has and what this one has? On your horse, this area here is pulled clear down to here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Um, so let me take this out, maybe. There we go.
Well, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like
Well, so
Legos for adults.
yeah, really. So like you can what you want to do is so when in all of our meditating and contemplating and thinking about these feet and how they what they are, how they respond, everything like that. This is one of the biggest deals here is that you have a foot and you have a capsule that grows from it. You're dealing with two different things, even though this one grows from this one. And the back of this foot has a specific uh, position, shape, form, function, and anything that deviates from what is anatomically correct in the back of this foot, um, okay, well, okay, look here. Here is another foot, and what I've done to this foot, okay, is I've removed half of everything internally. Like, okay, here you see the cartilage right there. Now your heel, this is your heel. Look at how much your heel can move. That is your heel. Underneath underneath this here is just this cartilage right here. So this whole cartilage goes clear back here in, and it is a major part of your heel. But in this case, the skin has been removed. See, that's the skin that was on this side of the foot. I skinned it just like you skin an animal. And so this foot is covered with skin, which is like a big thick sock. And so you know, first and foremost, you have to understand the horse has a foot covered with skin. That his foot does not end here at the hairline where he grows his capsule. That his foot, the cartilage extends above the hairline. See, like what you see here. Okay, let me see here. Let me look for something. Okay, this is above the hairline right there. Okay, well, just pretend this file is the hairline. All right, look at me shake. Got a hate getting old. Okay, so here, when we look at this, that's why we look at all this cartilage because it is all connected to the foot. It's all one unit, even though internally it is composed of other things. But see, the way they look at the foot and why their interpretation and conclusions are in error is because they do not see this covering as a container. Um, it's like, where's my thing here? Okay, so I got this squishy ball here. Okay, now it's this skin, it's got skin on the outside of it. And so it contains what's in there. Oh, there's something in there I never noticed before. There's a hard little thing there.
An
And so,
abscess.
what'd you
It's,
say?
it's an abscess brewing.
It's an abscess in my squishy
Yeah.
ball. Oh, it's right there. That thing, I guess, where they put the plug.
Uh,
So, this skin covering this foot is similar to the covering of this. And so if I'm going to understand this ball, I have to understand it first according to the covering on the outside and then what's on the inside. I can't negate what's going to happen to this foot if I squeeze it into a smaller container. It's like so they try to tell you that you have to have frog contact. This now remember this is the frog. The padding is not the frog. The padding is just the frog padding that grows from the frog. Just like this minute. This is not the the foot. It's just a hoof capsule. Okay, but it is not the foot of the horse. This is the foot of the horse. And so, but inside the skin, inside there, are this stuff here. Now, just a minute. Okay, so I want you to look at this here because that is digital cushion right here, and it is adipose tissue. It's the same stuff in the end of your nose and in whale blubber. It's adipose tissue. It is fat. You cannot build up fat unless you eat too much. But adipose tissue, I can't, if I exercise my nose or, put it on a board and, pound it a few times, I'm not going to build up the adipose tissue in the end of my nose. And so this false doctrine of frog pressure that you force the horse to walk on this frog here so that you can build up the internal tissues. Well, let me tell you what's happening. Okay, so here we see right here, that is the digital cushion. And it is does it have a little bit of fibrocartilage in it? Yeah. But it is fat. And the reason I know it's fat is because, first of all, when I soak these feet, I'll see big droplets of golden oil floating on top of the water after a while. That comes out of this digital cushion that's fat. And second of all, I put a foot in the oven one time on low because we were starving. No, I put a foot, in fact, it might have been, I can't remember what happened to that foot. But anyway, I put a foot in the oven because I wanted to try and cure it slowly, like oh, what are those deals, those machines you get that slowly dry stuff out? What do they call those?
A
Dehydrator.
dehydrator?
Yeah, I thought, okay, I'll slowly dehydrate it on low, like, 150 or so. So it's in there most of the day. And I come into the house and man, did it make the house smell. Um, and it wasn't a rotten foot either. It was a fresh one. And so anyway, so I had it in a cookie sheet. And when I brought it out of the oven, the pan was full of golden oil. And I was like, what in the heck? Well, that was from the digital cushion. And you know what? Here's the thing. When they used to hunt whales, they hunted them for their oil because the oils they burned in lamps, right? And so they had different grades of whale oil. And the highest grade of whale oil was a beautiful golden color. Well, that is the color that comes out of the digital cushion when you melt it in the oven, you know. Um, so this digital cushion here, of course you got, oh, I wonder, just a minute. Let me see if I can find, I got another bone. Hold on. Let me get this other bone here. Maybe it's back here. Where are you? Well, oh, it's right here. Okay, so here's your navicular bone right here, right there. See it? There's your navicular bone, right behind and kind of atop the back of your coffin bone here. Okay, and here, let's see, which way does that go? Here is your short pastern bone. Let's see. Okay, it's like putting a puzzle together, you know? There's your short pastern bone right there. Let's take a look at that. Right there. That's your short pastern bone. And then, of course, you'd have your long pastern bone, which is right here. Okay, so the whole back of this foot, look at it. It's soft cartilage and fat. See it there? See how easy it can be moved? See there? And so the only thing that helps this thing maintain its true shape and form is a correctly fitted hoof capsule with the correct heel height and everything else. Otherwise, this gets deformed right here. So we studied this inner foot to figure out, well, how's that hoof capsule supposed to fit it? So it's in studying this foot and knowing how all the parts work together with the rest of the leg, the pastern and the joints and the deep digital flexor tendon, and all of that. Like here you go. Here's your deep digital flexor tendon, this thing right here. Let me move this. This right here has a tremendous pressure pulling up and attached underneath that navicular bone there. Okay, so let's just look at this from under here. So here's your navicular bone right there. So what happens when these heels get trimmed out? Like if you look on this horse right here, you can see that you can see the heel buttress corium right here. It is turned in pointing. Let's see. Let me see if I can show you. Let's pretend this is the heel. It's pointed like this. It should be pointed like that. So this horse here, I think this, I'm not sure which horse this was, but irregardless, when things are ideal, these heel buttresses are not pointed in like that. They're pointed out, more out like that. So the only thing that maintains the back of the foot so that the foot functions correctly in the suspension, because all of this is the suspension system back here, is a correctly fitted hoof capsule. Now, you can see how the shape, look at this cartilage here. Look how it's shaped. Look how it's cupped. See how it's cupped there? Now the digital cushion is totally attached to this. You have to cut it off to get it out. Okay, but you see the shape. I mean, you got to think of these feet in how do structures work? How do shapes work? Okay, so you see that it is cupped like this, it's curved, and then it's curved around like this. And so it is supposed to be held in a specific position like this. Well, what happens if I go to pull it down like this? I go to pull it down like this, like from trimming, like, okay, what it'd be is, let's try it. Let's see. Let's check it out here. Okay, so let's say this is my foot with my heel, and I trim the heels lower than they should be. It should be supported up in the air like this. And instead I come in there, with my bright ideas, and I trim the heels down low, and I'm going to force this down like that, forcing it down like this, the cartilage. Well, the foot still wants to stand up like this. And so that deep digital flexor tendon and all the ligaments and everything else, and the leg and the joints and the shoulder, everything is wanting that foot to be right here, not down here. And so as the foot is forced up in the air, it takes the sidewall of the capsule and it pulls it around like this. And then the foot is distorted. So you see how easily that turns in like that. See there? This is what's been going on. Just that right there. And then it compresses. So you only have a certain amount of fat in here that is the digital cushion. Let's see, let's put this thing back in here. So here, we're going to shove this in here. See if we can make this work, okay? Let's say that this is your digital cushion, and when everything is just right, okay, it's in the foot in a certain way. Now look what happens here too. This is pretty interesting. Okay, when the horse is taking a step and that pastern, it goes down onto the digital cushion like that. Look what happens here when I push that down, how it automatically is wanting to push it up. Are you seeing that?
Very
That's how it
cool.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it works. Okay, so let's say we know that when you trim the heels out or down, the foot wants to stand back up, and as it does so, it pulls the capsule around behind like so. Well, what happens then? Your capsule's getting smaller, right? And so what happens is it starts to squeeze that digital cushion and the cartilages up like this. See how that got bigger? Okay, they think that when they don't realize they're making a smaller capsule, and so they really don't know, regardless of what they say, how this foot works, and how the fact that it's got, already got a covering on it, just like this ball here. And so they think that they're developing the digital cushion when the foot is going like that and being squeezed out the back. See, they think that is developing soft tissues, like you would develop a muscle. Well, you don't develop cartilage. The only thing that can happen to this cartilage is it turns to bone. And you don't develop this digital cushion. Okay, it is what it is. The only thing you can do for it is give it a correct hoof capsule so that it is supported in the right position so that it works correctly. Um, so anyway, so I think this thing is a good example of what they think. So their hoof capsule is getting smaller, and the cartilages are coming up and out the back and like that, and they think they're growing soft tissue. Ha. Okay, so anyway, let's look at this. See, there is one way this digital cushion looks, and one way only. There is one shape and form to the internal parts of this foot, and one only. And so if you start going and looking at feet that have been cut in half, and like that one guy, he's Dr. Van Horst or whatever his name is, he does all those plasticized slices of feet. And you go and look at the digital cushions, they're all different kinds of shapes. Because when you trim the heels out and it pulls the back of this down, it distorts and deforms the digital cushion. The only thing that should be done for the digital cushion is you're going to grow a correct hoof capsule. See, this one ain't too bad. Just a second here. This one ain't too bad. Uh, she could have had a little wider heels, all right? But all in all, she had a pretty good frog stay there, and it was in the right position to support her digital cushion. This right here. But this piece of frog here, if her frog here had been pulled under like this one, well, then this piece of frog stay here is going to be growing further down in the foot. And Bracy Clark called this thing a frog stay because wherever it grows, that's where the frog is going to stay. See, it supports and stabilizes the back of the foot and supports and stabilizes the digital cushion up where it is supposed to be. Let's see, let's look at this here. So this to me was really fascinating, finally taking one of these feet, skinning it. First of all, I've got better pictures so you can see, when this was fresh, it looked really cool. I accidentally let it dry out. But you can see the different kinds of coriums. Like here, this is all just skin. You know, yeah, I've got better pictures, but so you have, this is the skin that grows the hair on the leg right here. Let's do this here. The hair. All I did was remove the hair and then remove the hoof capsule. And you can kind of see the lines. This is the periopal corium that grows the periopal. You see the different, how it's different than this right here? This is the coronary band right here. And then there's another type of corium right below that. And that, I believe, is the corium that grows the lamina. That the corium that grows the lamina is a different corium. Now, I don't know if anybody else has discovered this, all right? Because no, they've never skinned a foot. I'm probably the first person in history to ever skin a foot like this. And so what I noticed, I'll go here in a minute, I'll see if I can go find better pictures of this. Just a minute. Let me try and see if I can get my light out here better. Hold on. Maybe. Ah,
Actually, Linda, the light is fine.
is it? Oh, okay. Let me retighten everything in. Okay, so let's just look at these here. Okay, so this I noticed after I skinned this and looked at it for a year, because it can be right in front of your face, not see it, is a different kind of corium than the coronary band. And I believe this is the corium that grows the initial lamina right here. Well, and you can see it here now on this foot too. You don't see it as well with the skin on the foot, but when you take the skin off the foot, man, you see it all. Okay. And so it's right here. So I am just assuming that it grows the lamina of the hoof capsule that attaches to the sensitive lamina of the foot. And then, of course, another kind of corium that they never talk about, and that is the corium right up here that emits, that makes that biological glue that attaches the lamina on the hoof capsule to the sole. So many different things that we've learned that they don't have any idea about. How can they make a correct interpretation when their understanding of anatomy is so seriously incorrect and flawed? I'd hate to have them be my heart doctor, or brain surgeon. I'd just be dead, which that's exactly what's happening out there if you haven't noticed. We get to see it all on Facebook now because everybody and their dog has a hoof reel channel or something like that, and is in the process, because they have been led to believe the wrong thing, they are then practicing incorrectly their trimming and shoeing and stuff like that. Okay, so of course, then we have the sole corium, another type of corium that grows the sole, and then we have the frog corium. So how many coriums is that? Periopal, coronary band, lamina. Oh, and then the lamina leaves themselves, okay, which I don't think they grow and replenish themselves, but you never know. And then the biological glue, lamina, white line glue there, and then this here that also makes the sole ridge, and then the sole corium, and then here's the front, and then other, well, heck, there's other kinds, because even it's interesting that here's your heel buttress here. Now these heel buttresses were pointed in a much better direction, pretty much kind of like this. So I think that was right. They were pointed pretty much like that and not like this, because that's what happens when the heels get trimmed out and they spool in. They go like this, and then they get turned in like that. Okay, so uh, I'm, and I wonder too if the corium along the bottom of the collateral groove is a little different than the regular sole corium. So just so many interesting things on these feet, and so vital to know, I would think, in order to draw correct conclusions as to how to treat these horses' feet, how to understand what may go on in the feet, as far as why is the horse lame? Why aren't things working out? This foot is meant to function in a specific manner. And if that capsule is not growing correctly from the foot and it is undeformed, with the correct heel height and everything else, and all of the lamina and the horn tubules in alignment and stuff like that, you're not going to have correct function. Um, let's see here. But we could just be looking at this thing forever and imagining how this happens, how these heels just start to, well, first of all, they can just contract totally like that, but always you're going to get some of that curling in like that. See, in fact, this can curl in clear to here, so that your foot, look at the difference in size. See, so that cartilage can curl in clear like that and just compress that whole foot in like so. So what's the difference in the size of the foot? Okay, so originally the back of your foot would be here and the front here, and so you're taking off over an inch, I do believe, at least. I don't know where my ruler is, but see, that's quite extensive there that you're robbing from the horse. And so as they lower the heels, you take a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and then you're going to get your nice compressed 30-degree hairline, and this is what your horse is then walking on right here instead of his actual heels. This is the heel. Here's his heel right here. These are not supposed to be, these bulbs are not supposed to be on the ground. Let's see, let's look at this one. Now you will find now this, I don't know. Yeah, this is a front foot, and you notice it's not round. Okay, you will find that some of these horses have more of this part of their heel than others. Like let's look at this mare. She didn't have a whole lot of heel right here. Let's look at this horse. She seems to have had a little more. I'm talking about the distance from right here to here. See, from there to there. Let's see. Let me look at some others here. Ta-dum, ta-dum. Well, I've seen some that have a whole lot of that part of the heel. Um, Let me see. Okay. Oh, that one doesn't. I saw one at a vet's office that had at least an inch and a half, that had probably this much, that much heel. I don't know what kind of horse it was or anything like that, but it had a lot of heel. It probably had about as straight a hairline as you could get. So, okay. So anyway, now I want to remind you about this horse here, and you can see how as I trimmed the heels, I think all I was doing was taking them back to the base of the frog. How they were being pulled down and then pushed forward, and then uh, you can't see it very well, but this wall was being pushed out like that gradually. But here's another thing I learned recently that I've been wondering about. So let's talk about how the heels get gradually trimmed out. So when you come in here and you get these feet, like if I would have trimmed this horse again, I'd have come in here and look, he's got some heel right here, but that's not his original real heel. That's the heel I'd been trimming out gradually. And so what happens is you come in and I would take this heel down to the base of the frog. I don't know if you can see that. I would take this heel, if I came in and I trimmed, I would of course take this heel back and down to the base of the frog right there. So I'd be taking off this little triangular chunk right there. Do you see it? This little triangular chunk here. Okay. And so what would happen is then as the horse would walk, okay, he's going to pull the bulb down and the heel down more so that when I come back again, I'm not just trimming off growth. I'm trimming off a heel that once again bent forward like this under the foot, and it becomes a little triangular nubbin again. And I would just keep coming in there and trimming it off and trimming it off and trimming it off. I need to do a whole I need to do some sort of drawing or something like that to show how it's done. You know how they're always taking pictures of horses' feet like that, you know, like that. Well, see how that's curved down and how, what does that do? Let me see if I can find something to as an example of what that is going to do. Well, okay, it's the whole piece. So if you had a heel that was up like this and it gets bent down like this, it's going to bend the wall here, right here, and it's always going to make this little triangular piece so that eventually you have no heel buttress left at all. Okay, I don't know if that explains whatever, but anyway, okay, well, I guess I need to put these things back in their little container here. But before I go, okay, Tiffany, I want you to remember that this is what the back of the horse's foot is more supposed to look like. You know, that area between the bulbs is supposed to be higher up in the foot. So here what we're going to do, we're just going to put her back in her shoe. And there we go. See there? It's just a shoe. That's all it is. But it has to be specifically configured to support the foot as we know it's supposed to be anatomically. And so now we know that the whole back of this foot can be deformed as, was demonstrated on this foot here, that when you trim the heels out, it contracts them in like that because it can't do anything else because of the shape here, and that it can contract them up to that much. And so it takes all this fat in here and it starts to see if it would shove all this up above into here. And so they think again that that is developing soft tissue. They're hoof builders, they think, but you can't build fat. Okay. Can't build fat. And when you make this smaller, it just squeezes it out up on the top. See, I probably can't do it with this foot because it's too hard. But anyway, okay, so I'm going to put these back. Okay, where's lid? Well, oh, there it is. Just say, I see dead hooves. Haha, no. It's the anatomical joke there. Okay, let's just put you there. All right. Okay. All right, so does anybody want to make any comments to any of that?
I thought
That
that
was
was really,
interesting,
really
Linda.
good.
Thank you.
Okay, did that kind of help you understand a few things more?
It really did, especially the ball squishing in the back for the digital cushion. That made perfect sense. Perfect
Yeah,
illustration.
it
Doesn't
was
it?
wonderful.
Okay, well, and just think about this. You're a select few people in the world that know how the horse's foot works. Isn't that a sad thing? You know, uh,
Kind of scary too.
yeah, it's very scary because, okay, right here, okay, this book by Henry Hamerling. Henry Hamerling was a certified journeyman farrier and actually a scholar. Okay, he was passed away now. Well, let's talk about this book here. Okay, so I'm going to take off these gloves because I want to show you just exactly what a big deal it is, what we're knowing here. See, because we don't realize, let's see here. How am I going to do this? Let me put this up here and this down here. Okay, I think I can show you that way. Okay, so this is really, really a special book because this is a book. It says it's the where we get the word Bible, by the way, the bibliographic record and a brief timeline history of horseshoeing. And what this is a book about everybody that we know of up to the time he published this that ever wrote anything about the foot of the horse. And so once you see how many people have written on it, experts, you would think that they would know the stuff that I just showed you, but they don't. So, and because of that, their practice is wrong. And because of that, they're killing horses slowly and surely and tormenting and torturing them. But horses are stoic and they don't have a voice and they don't always limp. Okay. And so a lot of times this lameness is developing for years. Just slow, gradual torture, slow, gradual hoof distortion that nobody knows is happening. Nobody knows what I showed you except for us. How the back of these feet contract, okay, and spool in, and how the capsule gets smaller as you continually trim the heels out, and how it deforms the whole inner foot and it'll crush the inner heel up into the foot and all these things. And ultimately, this is, and then the periopal all, and the frog, it all ties it up in a nice, tidy package and holds it together for the survival of the horse. The foot adapts to distortion for survival, and it does so amazingly. So, this book here, On the Horse's Foot, by it's compiled by Henry Hamerling. And I always advise people that they need to read his research article called The Proper Hoof Angle, which is really about heel height, where he goes through the whole history of what men have believed, especially during the past 250 years, on heel height, because heel height is directly related to dorsal wall angle. Okay, if I want my dorsal wall angle to be steeper, then I raise the heels. If I want it to be lower, I lower them. That's how that works. So, so even though his article is called The Proper Hoof Angle, it's really about heel height. And so he talks about how up until the last 250 years, it was believed that horses should have ample heel with the frog off the ground. But that in 1754, this all changed with the doctrine that Philip Lafosse, a farrier veterinarian in France, came up with. And the reason he thought this up was pretty much he thought if horses walked on their frogs, they wouldn't slip on the cobblestones. And so he come up with this idea. Well, you know how people are. Sometimes they get a bright idea, and then once they blabbed it around, even if it don't work, they're going to defend it because they don't like to be. They don't want people to know they were wrong, especially if it concerns the fact you might have killed somebody's horse over the issue accidentally, right? Lowering heels, the horse got mechanical laminitis because he wasn't supposed to have heels like that. So he talks in that article, he gives a whole timeline about that and about going clear back to the Greeks who believed that horses should have heels. And so if we look at the Greek statues, we find all the horses had lots of heel. We look at old paintings before 1754 and even a few up until the early 1800s, and you will find horses with ample heel. And they didn't have the lameness problems that developed from gradually taking down the heels to force frog pressure. And so I just want to show you some things about this book because it really blew me away at all the people who have written on the horse's foot. So I'll show you what, let's see, he published this in, where does it here? Articles. Well, he's got articles by Henry Hamerling, and when was it? Okay, when is your, well, crying out loud, dude? 1990. All right, 1990. Now, just a minute here. Let me grab this other book. Okay. Which one are you? Okay. Here's a book. Oh, hold on. Okay. Here's a book that didn't come out until 1992. They got all the barefoot trimming and stuff going. Okay, so up until 1990, um, starting in 1976, people were starting to grow heels on horses again. The farriers were too. All right, but then in 1992, this Yahoo changed it all by saying he that wild horses don't have heels, which we as now know is not true, right? Okay, so this is not about getting into him. This is just about timeline. So Henry Hamerling uh, wrote this book and published it in 1992, or he compiled it, let's say. Okay, there's only 500 copies in existence, and Janet Eyre bought me this one. Bless, bless, bless her. Okay, so look at this. What does that say? Can you read that? Can somebody read that to me?
Dedicated to you, searchers and researchers.
Right, that's us, ain't it? You betcha. Okay, so what this is going to tell you is just a minute here. Well, let's just he's got some comments, quotes here that I'll read you before we get into this. This is whoever William Steincross is. I don't know, probably some famous horse person. He says, I can recall my astonishment when I first began to collect books at finding in books written 2 or 3 centuries ago minute descriptions of discoveries that I had made for myself only after a long period of trial and error. You know what? Same here. Same here. I'll read stuff Bracy Clark wrote or some of them, and I'm going, or Henry Hamerling even. Come to find out, some of the same discoveries about heels. Okay. The next quote here is, unfortunately, many in the horse world today, this is Princess Anne, by the way, and you know the royal family, they're all horsemen. Unfortunately, many in the horse world today are not sure what a healthy, well-shod foot should look like. Novice owners, especially if competition-minded, may not be sufficiently sensitive to the horse's long-term needs, and the farrier's role in the welfare of the horse is not always appreciated. Then this somebody named Doug Butler. Okay, well, he's a famous farrier. Wisdom must be applied to knowledge. Someone has said learning without wisdom is a load of books on an ass's back. That's a good one. Experience is a vital part of wisdom. So everything intact is based on research, study, and experience, and thinking way outside the hoof capsule or inside it, maybe. So who's this guy? I don't know. In every profession and trade, it is a common thing to hear beginners say, I know, I know. Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I know how that is. No matter what you tell them, they will always answer, I know. Boy, kids are really bad like that. Such an answer is never given by an old, learned, or experienced man, because as we grow older and wiser, we know that there is no such thing as knowing it all. Boy, that's the truth. Sometimes the more you know, you find out the less you really knew. Okay, so then this other guy, Jas A. Fullerton. So I think Henry put these, he liked these quotes, you know. He says, there is a certain fascination about shoeing horses that I don't think you will find in any other trade. All through my life, I have learned something more than I did not know before. The work looks simple at first, but it is our ignorance of the real work itself that makes it appear simple. And I'll tell you one thing, people don't realize how hard just trimming a horse is physically, how physically demanding. And now we know this very mentally demanding as well. And then Doug Butler again. Yeah, he's a famous farrier. I think in the next 20 years, I can become pretty knowledgeable about farriery. And so he'd been a farrier all his life, So I appreciate people, no matter how much they've been in a profession or what they've learned, that they still stay open to learning. But guess what? The most important thing is unlearning, because you cannot learn the truth if you are not willing to unlearn. And so that for me, that's what this journey has been, because I was fully indoctrinated into both farriery and barefoot trimming and all the trappings. So I had to unlearn a ton of stuff in order to learn. But why did I do that? Because my horse was not right. So I knew something was wrong. But I didn't blame the horse. I blamed myself, and then started finding out, as I found out incorrect things that they taught in anatomy, well, that just opened me up more and more to try and look and say, well, what's a truth? What's a reality? What's really going on? Okay, so the contents of this book, okay, it's going to give you the preface, abbreviations, authors, chronological list of books, titles, bibliography, index by country. Again, this is a book on people who have written about the foot of the horse for centuries. Okay, anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, histories, timeline history, info, my sources, where you can find these books, mistakes, and a glossary and index. Okay, so let me see here. I'm not going to read the preface. I'm just going to show you this. Okay. He says, I will read this part though. He says, I have tried to include all books that deal seriously with the horse's foot, shoes, and shoeing, although many of these books will not be classified under the subject heading of horseshoeing. They're, they're all books that have significant bearing on horseshoeing and care of the horse's foot. Thus, while Xenophon's treatise on horsemanship only includes a few paragraphs on the health and care of horses' feet, it is included in this bibliography. But books such as Wagon Mound Ranch Supply, Horseshoeing Coloring Book, and Clip Clop, a 1958 children's book by Nancy Hogue, are not. I cannot be sure that this bibliography is complete or accurate. There may be sources I have missed or books that have altogether but disappeared. Many of these books I have not seen, and so I had to rely on other bibliographies. However, this bibliography is a complete and accurate as I could make it. I have tried to confirm everything I haven't seen through at least two sources. I believe that I have found and eliminated a few previous mistakes on shoeing books. Is as complete and accurate. Wait a minute. Wait on shoeing book. Okay, no other source can do as much to facilitate further study of the horse's foot on shoes and shoeing. You'll find most books listed only once by the year of the first edition or the earliest edition I found. Subsequent editions are in that listing on the line beginning, also pub, whatever that means. There are also listings when the book has been published in another country, reprinted more than 100 years after its previous listing, or reprinted in the last 25 years. Please note, with the exception of the table of contents in the index, all page numbers given refer to the book being discussed. Yeah, okay, blah, blah. All right, so he gives abbreviations over here. Here we're going to look at authors. All right, this is just an alphabetical list of authors. Starting with A, okay, the first guy is Abden from 1984, but you see it's not the number of the year, because down here you got a guy that wrote books in 1827, 1830. Okay, so we're just going to go through these: A, B, C, D, H, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S. Is there a Q? Don't know if there's Q. T, U, V, W, W, X, Kasanophon, Y, Yovich, and Z. And I never counted them, but there's a lot. That's a lot of authors from many different years. In the 1700s, all that. Okay, so that's just authors. Now we have number 2, a chronological list of books. This starts with the first one we know of in 430 BC and 380 BC down to 36 BC. Now, Casanophon here is in 380 BC. Okay. And Casanophon said, he says from Morgan's translation in 1893. Now, why he doesn't put the whole thing that it said, and he should have. He says the first thing you ought to look at are his feet. High ones keep what is called the frog well off the ground. And first of all, you see where they go dot, dot, dot. Well, he left out what he said. He said the first thing you ought to look at are his feet. They should be high in front and high behind. That's what Casanophon said. Why he wanted to cut out that little bit, I don't know. But anyway, he goes, high ones, meaning heels, high behind. He did put the word heels here, so that's good. Keep what is called the frog well off the ground, while horses with low hoofs, heels, low heels, walk with the hardest and softest part of the foot at once. That means the hoof wall and the bulbs are forced on the ground. The bulbs are the softest part of the foot. He said, okay, so while horses with low hooves, walk with the hardest and softest part of the foot at once, like knock-kneed men. Simon, that's this guy here who was the first one to write Greek up here. Simon says that their hollow ringing sound is proof of good feet, and he is right. Okay, well, anyway. And it says here, Casanophon was clearly against frog pressure, but he was also against moistening the hooves, and that he was incorrect. Okay, so anyway, all right, so then this is a chronological order, so there's 36. Not a whole lot until we get into the 1200s. You know why? Because knowledge started being increased then, and the freedom to write. All right, but it really takes off in the 1500s after the printing press was invented. So these are all, this is all the books throughout the years. He's getting up into the 1600s here. Lots of people in the 1600s. Oh man, went to town in the 1700s. Okay, so let's see here. Till we get to 1754. Let's see. Where is, oh, yep, here he is. Here's the villain. Lafosse, Etienne, his name was Etienne Guillaume. Well, Philip, they called him Philip. Okay. Um, let's see what it says about him. Dum, dum, dum. Okay, it says Lafosse's good ideas were overlooked, but his bad ones were adopted. Lowering the heels was one of them. He found frog pressure helpful in cases of weak heels and wrongly, hastily recommended it for all horses, plus many more mistakes. He recommended a tip shoe and a low hoof angle. That's low hairline. Okay. Is it any wonder that he was an early observer of navicular disease? There you go. Because he was the cause of it. On page 11, he describes a supposed shoulder lameness which was actually in the foot, navicular disease. He's talking about in his book here, which I found translated into English, by the way, which is odd for several reasons. He calls it a compression, but says it's as if between an anvil and a hammer, which is more like concussion, and says it raises the nut bone against the tendon. So they must call the navicular bone the nut bone, which puts the fleshly sole in a state of compression. So then why does he recommend more frog pressure? Well, I got my ideas on that, but we won't talk about them here. Um, okay, so okay. So anyway, we keep going here. Yep. All these people, sooner or later, he's going to get into Bracy Clark now. Okay, here's another book like by Lafosse here. The German translation of his book. Oh, the poor Germans. Uh, okay, so the vet school started and all adopted Lafosse's methods, the bad ones. Okay, 1793, somewhere in here is when the vet school in London opened up. That Bracy Clark was one of the first students. It had 3 students. Bracy Clark was one of the first students. Okay, so here we got Edward Coleman. He became the head. Okay, when the vet school in London first opened up, there was a guy from the French vet school that opened in 1759 or something like that. 4 or 5 years after Lafosse came up with his ridiculous, horrid doctrine, horse killing doctrine of frog pressure, lowering heels for frog pressure. And so then again, the vet school in England did not open up till like 1791 or something like that. And Bracy Clark was one of the first people to graduate from there. Now, the first president of the school was a guy by name Saint Bell, who was also a Frenchman. And so he taught all the French ways, and the lowering the heels, the for frog pressure, all that. He dies, gets some disease and dies, and the king appoints this guy here, Edward Coleman, who had no experience with horses or shoeing or anything else. And so this is amazing here. So it's now 1796. He has been the head of that school for maybe 3 years. Already he's writing a book on how to prepare a horse's feet. So here's some of the stuff he said. And he also adopted Lafosse's method of lowering heels. But this as well, listen to this. Manger says that Coleman recommended paring the sole until it sprang easily under thumb pressure. I remember watching some shoers trim and prepare a foot and then pressing right there. I didn't know what they were doing. I think this is what they were doing. Okay, because this guy ruled that school for 40 some years. And so his ideas got firmly entrenched into farriery, into veterinary science, into what the anatomy is. Okay, so you know that uh, that one of the things that I happened to stumble upon was the fact that they didn't know the anatomy of the sole, and they didn't know there was a convex sole ridge around the perimeter of the foot, right? And so they're always carving it out and forcing the horse to stand on his walls alone. Well, here you go. See, they believed the foot was only concave, and they also believed it was like a suction cup, like that. So this guy, as the head of that school, and a scumbag deluxe, this guy was a narcissist from the word go. Okay, and that's proven in other writings that he was a horrible man, including what he did to Bracy Clark. So it says he recommended paring the sole until it sprang easily under thumb pressure. Smith notes, perhaps, so he's quoting other writers through the centuries talking about this dude. Smith notes, perhaps in nothing was his ignorant self-confidence more evident than in the subject of shoeing. He was not long installed as professor before he discovered things in his study of the foot which did not exist. And at the time when his knowledge was rudimentary, he produced shoes intended to combat evils which were only imaginary. Bracy Clark talks about how he was always trying to get a patent for his shoes. See, it was all about money. He wanted to be the one to make money. He wanted to sell his books. He wanted to sell his shoes. He sets the tone for the whole hoof care industry. That guy right there. Because uh, I don't know if you noticed the greed out there, especially in the barefoot world. Okay, well, heck, it's in the furrier world too. Man, they cannot wait to get online and get a class started and start charging people and making their trimmers, and charging them a ton and a half to, be certified by them and everything like that. Okay, that's what this Yahoo did. Where is he? That's what this guy was all about. Greed. Nothing but greed. Um, if you if we were to go and watch his interview on YouTube they did last year, he talks about how when he come out of wild horse country, he tells this gal, and you know what I charged? Like, see, because it was all about how he could make more money by charging a big exorbitant amount to trim a horse rather than put a shoe on it. See, there you go. And I've seen it other places too. Just greed, just greedy, you know. So anyway, okay. So and at the time when his knowledge was rudimentary, he produced shoes intended to combat evils which were only imaginary. All right. Well, um let's see here. All right. So there's that creep. And so anyway, here's more writings on the foot of the horse, people. All on farriery, some on anatomy. Here's another one by Edward Coleman. Let's see what it says about him here. After reading so much about Coleman's lack of preparation, his wrong theories, and the damage he caused, I was unprepared to find so many sharp insights without knowledge of the natural hoof. We shall be liable to mistake disease for health. Most writers have given plates and description of diseased and contracted feet when they intended to describe a natural foot. Also, men have attended chiefly to the shoe and not to its application. Now, this is interesting that he said this because Bracy Clark in his book said, in his book that he wrote in 1829, which it ain't here yet. There's another book by Coleman. Yeah, that creep wrote all kinds of stuff. So his guy, because he was the head of that school, well, you know how academics are, okay? Then his word, his ideas got accepted, and that's what they teach in all the vet schools now. How about that? Ain't that special? And so Bracy Clark said, what was it? How he said, just a minute here. We got his book right here. I'll read you just the first thing he said in his preface, and Hippopotamia, the true, what is it? The true structure, laws, and economy of the horse's foot. All right. He says, about 7 years ago, whilst pursuing some experiments on the contracted feet of horses, because what does trimming heels down do? It spools, curls, and contracts heels, right? He said about 7 years ago, whilst pursuing some experiments on contracted feet of horses, it occurred to me that the causes usually advanced to explain this serious imperfection were not real. Okay? Meaning he'd been practicing, so I'm not sure. He'd been practicing after he got out of vet school because they were producing farriers. That's what the vet school was for, pretty much. And so he opened up some shoeing establishments, and he was researching, he was doing dissections, and he was trying to understand why these horses' feet were contracting. He himself practiced Lafosse's method for the first 10 years he was in business as a veterinarian. See, you have to understand that the farriers before the vet schools were the horse doctors, were the veterinarian, and vice versa. There was no like special horse vet that didn't shoe horses. Okay. The farriers were the veterinarians. And so then when these schools graduated these people, they were farriers and veterinarians. And so Bracy Clark was a farrier and a veterinarian. And so he opened shoeing establishments. And so he's seeing all this lameness and everything and this horrible stuff going on because he don't know it's Lafosse's doctrine yet, though. Okay. And so again, this was published in 1829. So this is like um what did he say? 7 years before or something like that. He comes to find out that the reasons that the farriers are giving for why heels are contracted are not true. They're not true. And so his first ideas was that it was because of the way that the shoe was put on the foot. He thought it was horseshoe nails. So he tried to come up with the way to put shoes on without nails. But he also knew that it was Lafosse's doctrine, because then when you get to the end of his preface, he says, and as to Lafosse, who was dead by then, okay, but his doctrines, and he had a book on anatomy, and I mean, his doctrines, the schools had adopted his bad ideas, right? And as to Lafosse, if anyone will read him attentively and altogether, which I can imagine this guy did, they will, I think, come to the conclusion that so far from borrowing from him, because see, Coleman was always talking Bracy Clark down because Coleman was a greedy sot. And so Bracy was a sincere, good man who really wanted to find answers and was really into research and scholarship and stuff like that. And so any idea that Bracy came up with, Coleman shot down in the school by snidely saying bad things about him and his research. And Bracy didn't know this for a long time. He couldn't figure out why his business and his research wasn't going further than it did. Well, it was because Coleman was just stabbing the knife in his back anytime he got a chance, and stuff. Because Coleman wanted to be the one to make the money on his patented shoes and on his book and all this kind of stuff. So he says, so he would accuse, oh, well, nothing, he ain't got nothing new. He just borrowed everything he knows from LaFosse. That's what they would say about Bracy. Okay, so he'd been accused of that. So he's answering that accusation here by what he's saying. So he says, and that's why he says it this way. And as to LaFosse, if anyone will read him attentively and altogether, they will, I think, come to the conclusion that so far from borrowing from him, I have allowed him to know what he never really understood. That's just a way of saying if he was here and I could talk to him, but he's dead, okay, then I would show him where he made all these mistakes and how he really didn't understand what he thought he did. Okay. So he said, or why did not his countrymen, remember, Bracy's English and LaFosse is French. And so Bracy's talking about the Frenchmen over there, the French vet schools, all this stuff. French farriers who have now adopted this frog pressure doctrine, cutting the heels out of these horses, which contracts heels. We know it says, where is it here? Or why did not his countrymen understand it before I published and practiced shoeing with the motion for the foot long ago? So Bracy, in his shoeing establishment, they did not trim the heels out and force frog pressure. And they had good results. But it still kind of went nowhere because of all the nasty things Coleman kept saying about him. I mean, my God, the guy was the head of this big fancy school, right? Appointed by the king. You know which king? Crazy King George. The same king that we went to the Revolutionary War with. Yep, that guy. Okay. Uh, he says, I published and have practiced shoeing with the motion for the foot long ago, but it was the business of these colleges formerly. See, it's no kidding. It's like a soap opera between these people. Um, so the colleges, on the one hand, they adopted his bad ideas, right? At the same time, they were always trying to depreciate him and talk him down as well, meaning LaFosse. Okay. The first head of the college there in France hated LaFosse, yet he adopted his frog pressure doctrine. So, you know what it means to depreciate someone? It means to, uh, well, if you appreciate someone, you think what they're talking about is good and well. If you depreciate them, got all this new English, this English anyway. If you depreciate them, you're talking them down like they're insignificant. They don't know nothing. Okay. And usually when people steal someone else's ideas, they'll do that. See, I know. Okay. So it was the business of these colleges formerly to depreciate LaFosse till I praised him as making the only step that had been made, though a false one. For certain it is that by his false doctrine of frog pressure, which the colleges adopted, like they made no advancement in anything, but then they wind up adopting, just like Henry Hamerling said here, they wind up adopting these false doctrines and these really bad ideas. See? So yeah, you advanced yourself with the bad idea is what he's saying. He says, till I praised him in making the only step that had been made, though a false one, for certain it is that by his false doctrine, right there, false doctrine about frog pressure, he did a great deal of harm, and the effects of it are still felt by thousands of men and horses, both in England and France to this day. So this is 1829. Lafosse came up with his doctrine in 1754. So however long that is, 29, 45, add those years up. All right, so, okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so Coleman, where does it say it here? Anyway, okay, well, and then he's got another book here. Okay, so another book Coleman writes here. This is 1800. So this guy within 6 years makes himself the hoof care expert. This creep. Smith says nothing brought more ridicule on Coleman than this invention. Okay, let me read what the name of the book was. It's called Observations on the Formation and Uses of the Natural Frog of the Horse, with a description of a patent artificial frog to prevent and cure contracted hooves, thrush, cankers, and sand cracks. Lowering the heels does all of this. All right? Canker. You want to know why? Any of you ever seen those Facebook pages on canker?
Ugly stuff. Ugly.
Yeah. Guess what caused it? Lowering heels. That's what causes it. Okay, why is that? Because it strips the frog out of the foot. Pretty soon the frog has no protection, and it wears out the frog corium here, causes a wound, which causes proud flesh and all kinds of weird growth and stuff like that. That's what happens. See, that frog has to have frog padding on it so that it doesn't turn into a big scabby nasty wound. And of course, once you're through that, what are you into? You're into the digital cushion. See, and of course the horse stepping, you got a hole in your real frog here. The horse stepping down, pastern descending, squeezing the digital cushion out that hole. Yeah, that's not nice. Okay, so okay. So it says Smith says nothing brought more ridicule on Coleman than this invention. Uh how look at what they're doing today. They got the same thing, right? Look at all these deals where okay, you'll see them how they'll like in easy boots or any of these things or in shoes, how they will have like a wedge pad and then they'll have an elevated triangular piece above that for frog support. Okay, that's what this guy was inventing. I was looking at one of them the other day and I went, this is stupid. This is exactly what this is. It was a easy shoe. Remember, because I was making frog support for my pony. And then when I quit, her feet got better. How about that? See? Because the frog's supposed to be off the ground, right? Okay. So it says, It says nothing brought more ridicule on Coleman than this invention of false frog support. Bransby Cooper, a friend of Coleman, tells us he took a new purchase to the college to show Coleman, who remarked that as the feet showed a tendency to contraction, a pair of his shoes would prevent all further mischief. Cooper adds that on leaving the college, The horse went so lame that he could not get home until the shoes were taken off. How about that? Okay, hey, this is where all your vet's ideas come from, people. Coleman's ideas on the supposed necessity of frog pressure were also expressed in his earlier observations. The common bar shoe is applied purposely to guard the frog from pressure, but if the bar cannot be made to rest on the frog, it is but if the bar cannot be made to rest on the frog, it is productive of mischief. Actually, reverse is true. The frog is damaged by excessive and constant pressure. There we go. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, so now we're into 1800. Okay, so these are, again, people writing on the foot of the horse. If there weren't problems, people wouldn't be writing on it, right? Okay, here we go. This guy here in 1804, Lafosse again. Oh, he's still alive then. Okay, so he must have been old by then. The Veterinarian's Pocket Manual, a treatise on the diseases of horse, particularly the glanders, whatever that is. Okay, oh, wait a minute. Let's go back here. Here's Bracy Clark's first book in 1809. Okay, so the book I was reading you is a reprint of that book with a new preface. And in that book is where he learned that Coleman had been working against him for 20 years. Okay. So, and this book, oh, well, this isn't the same exact book. This book was called A Series of Original Experiments on the Foot of the Living Horse, exhibiting the changes produced by shoeing and the causes of the apparent mystery of this art. So that was his first book. That wasn't the same book I read to you. Okay, so he says Clark announces his great discovery of the elasticity of the foot, which had already been discovered by Strickland Freeman and Jeremiah Bridges. He took a cast of the same horse's hoof for a period of 6 years. That was no easy feat. And attributed the change in shape as due to shoeing, which he felt prevented expansion and thereby caused contraction. So you see, as I said, Bracy, even though he was against frog pressure at the time, did not realize, I'm not sure if any of them did, or even Henry here, that literally lowering the heels causes heel contraction. That's it, bottom line. Okay. So, and some of the stuff he says about Bracy, I do not agree with him because I feel I know him better. Okay. So it says, unfortunately, he did not take casts of unshod hooves over the same period to use for comparison. And here's the thing. You see this foot? Okay. See, Bracy Clark never got to see wild horse feet. Oh, wait a minute. Bracy Clark never got to see wild horse feet. And so what happened? He got this one mare that had never been shod, and then they shod her, and he took casts and they did pictures. But this was the mare's foot when she came out of the pasture, right here. Just you see that? Okay. First of all, her heels, the whole back of her foot, her bulbs are pulled under. He never knew that. He thought, see, he says the natural foot of the horse. Because he'd never seen one, he assumed, but because this mare was out on a pasture till she's 5 years old and never trimmed, that this was her natural foot, that this was a correct foot. See, and see how wide it is? And look, the heels are wide apart. They're not contracted. but he never got to see what we've seen in the wild horses. Okay. So, and of course, Henry Hamerling, he don't understand a lot of these things. So it takes a lot of different details, put stuff together sometime and understand these people, where they were coming from. You have to know what somebody believed, what they were taught, what was believed, what they practiced, and why, to understand why they said what they did, and as to whether what they said was correct or incorrect about the horse's foot. Okay. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. Okay, so Bracy Clark wrote more books than anybody else on the foot of the horse, and as well as some other horse diseases. He was a scholar and a prolific writer. Okay, there's Bracy Clark, Bracy Clark, Bracy Clark, Bracy Clark. 1813, Bracy Clark. Keep going here. We're getting up to 1815. All these different. Here's another one by Bracy Clark in 1817. Something about anyway stuff. Okay, Bracy Clark. Bracy Clark. Bracy Clark. And all kinds of stuff he wrote on about horses. Let's see. Bracy Clark. Bracy Clark. Bracy Clark. You can read all these books too on Internet Archive. Bracy Clark, Canker and Ringbone. Bracy Clark, Cracked Hooves and Thrush. Um, Bracy Clark, A Short History of the Horse and Progress of Horse Knowledge. I love that guy. Bracy Clark, A Disclosure of the Apparatus for Making the New Tablet Shoe of Expansion. Different things. Oh my God. Bracy Clark, 1827, The Foot of the Horse, Its True Nature, Structure, Laws, and Economy Explained, to which are added observation on the ruinous effects of the principle involved with the ordinary shoe. Let's see here. Okay, and we're going to get to 1829 here, which is the book I got. 1829, Hippodynamia, The True Structure, Laws, and Economy of the Horse's Foot. Also, yeah, that's what it is. Now, it's interesting that before I ever heard of Bracy Clark, you get on my YouTube channel, I had a little series I was calling The True Foot of the Horse. And the reason I named it that was because I had found already that many things they were teaching were not accurate according to what I was seeing on these feet, like the sole ridge. And so I called it the true foot of the horse because what I had learned and what I've been taught was not true. It wasn't working, and my horse was not sound like he should have been. Okay, so then later, when I learned about Bracy Clark, I was like, well, I understand where he's coming from by saying that. See, because he was finding that things that were being taught were not true. Okay, so I think he died in 1840 or 50 something. But we're going to skip forward here. At this point, there's 400 writers that I put there. So we're still going up into the 1800s. See, many pages, more writers, more books, writing on the foot of the horse. Why? Because you got all these horses going lame and everybody's trying to figure out why. But once something gets established in suckademia, okay, academia, call it suckademia, all right, deceivedemia, once it gets established there, it's like pulling teeth to get them yahoos to change anything. See, I have no respect for them. I have no respect for the higher halls of learning. I mean, look what they're doing. How they're just turning all our kids into a bunch of hoodlums. Okay, so let's keep going. More, I mean, holy Hannah. More writing. We're up in the 1970s here. We got 1976, so we're going to get Leslie Emery. Let's read his deal. 1976. Let's see. Well, how come he don't have his book in here? Hmm. Let's see. Common sense horseshoeing, the fact skeleton, shoe your own horse, an illustrated guide. Huh. Well, that's weird. I wonder why he don't have his book in here. That is just really weird. That book by Leslie Emery. Uh, Horseshoeing Theory and Hoof Care. That is just weird as all get out. Oh, nope, here it is. He has it as 1977. Horseshoeing Theory and Hoof Care, where Leslie Emery advocated having heels on horses and was changing the whole hoof care world until Jamie Jackson moved from uh, moved from Arkansas out to California to shoe with him, and then convinced him that his ways didn't work. So I got his book right here. Janet bought me that book too. Bless her heart. Okay, thank you, Janet, for being such a good friend and for buying those things for me because you have helped. You just don't even know. Okay, so they write, it says, while the focus of this book is predominantly on navicular disease, remember, when did navicular start? When Lafosse started lowering heels. While the focus of this book is predominantly on navicular disease, it is full of valuable insights and information and is clearly and profusely illustrated. They make a good case against the desirability of frog pressure. Leslie Emery was against frog pressure, and he tells the history of it in here as well. They speak strongly for a higher average hoof angle, meaning high heels. They're the first in this century to point out the fact that it is moisture, not dryness, that cracks and weakens hooves. Well, see, I don't agree with Leslie Emery there. And there were things he didn't know. Yeah, he was adding heels, but okay, I want to tell you about my horse's feet out here. It's been raining for 3 weeks straight. His feet haven't been dry once. And so I got him in last week because I wanted to take pictures of this other foot. And the sole is hard as a rock. And the second the feet dry out, well, I mean, yeah, the sole is as hard as a rock's. Okay. So don't tell me moisture softens feet. I mean, there's a type of soft that's good. Okay. But when you have a close to anatomically correct foot and good heel and, everything in its place pretty much and growing correctly, moisture is the best thing you could ever have for feed. And the horses that prove that are the Salt River wild horses in Arizona who spend half the day in the river eating river grass and half the day in the desert. See, but he would say that because he lacked an understanding of the things that you and I can know today. All right. So it says an excellent book. There is an extremely important point we wish to make. Our experience indicates the treatment of front leg conditions greatly assists treatment of hind leg lameness. The reverse, that proper balancing of hind hooves greatly assists in prevention and treatment of front leg injuries is equally valid and important. Well, yes. Yeah, you want that just kind of makes sense, I would guess, too. You want 4 good feet, not just 2. Okay, so here we're going to keep going here. We're almost to the end. See, 1100, I counted up to 1100 books written and on the horse here, on feet, feet.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's keep going. All right, so altogether 1154 books in here. Hey. I mean, this guy's a scholar now, right? Compiling all those books, let alone the fact that he comments on all of them. Holy Hannah. Where are we at here? Okay. So, just a minute. Okay. Okay, so here's all the authors. Here's all the books. Okay, now titles, periodicals from 1888. No, well, they're in alphabetical order, so it don't make a difference here. Periodicals, books. I counted. Well, I had 1154 here. I don't know why I have 1127 there, but anyway, here you go. Here we go. All the titles of the books and the year they were written. Here we go. Let's see. Skip forward. Okay. Now, bibliographies. Those books which are primary bibliographies are shown in bold type. In other words, these were people writing books like what he wrote here. Okay, listing everybody that wrote on the foot and what they said. Okay, so, okay, index by country. This is American books. Right here, American, and of course it's in alphabetical order. Austrian, that's where they got the Lipizzaners. British books. Okay, quite a lot of British, like a lot of American. Because we got a problem, we want to know why. Okay, Czechoslovakian, there's one. French books, yeah, dudes, it's your fault. You're Philip Lafosse. German books, here we go. Lots of German books. Hungarian, there's one. Italian and Byzantine. Latvian, books from the Netherlands on horses' feet. Polish books on horses' feet. Russian books on horses' feet. Scandinavian books on horses' feet. I mean, holy Hannah. South African books on horses' feet. Spanish books on horses' feet. Unclassified books. We don't know what country they were in. This here. Now he's listing books on anatomy, physiology, and biomechanics. Those which are primarily on anatomy, physiology, and biomechanics are shown in bold type. The others contain sections on anatomy. Okay. Alrighty then. So Clark, got Clark here. Uh, on anatomy. Clark was big on anatomy, and so Clark named the frog stay and the periopal band. Okay. All right. Okay, so again, these are all books on anatomy. You'd have think they'd have figured it out by now, wouldn't you? But you know why they can't? Because they can't unlearn. That's the biggest thing. You got to unlearn, and so, I took heels down for many years, and then having these problems with the horse and stuff like that. And I remember during this time being very troubled, and especially with my pony, and and Molly, Molly just was never right, and Valor showed it less, but he still wasn't right. And so, thinking, well, that wild horse gravel crunching foot is right around the next trim. And of course, you got to keep going because, you're in this transition period and all that. And yeah, can't remember where I was going with that. But anyway, uh, oh, unlearning. So I would wake up for it was like a month, I swear. Not supposed to swear though. But anyway, it was like a month. I would wake up and this thought would come to my head, which you've all heard, but it was the same thought every morning. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And it was during that time that I was doing a detailed analysis of every part of the hoof wall, starting at the toe, from the hairline to the ground, from the toe to the heel. And I got to the back of it and saw the heel buttress, and it dawned on me that we were trimming the heels out. But even before that, I started growing heels. But for the purpose of getting what I thought were run forward heels to stand up, with the full intention of, once I got everything to stand up, uh, to cut them off again. So anyway, so anatomy, you have to unlearn. You have to unlearn. You have to be willing to think that the experts can be wrong, that you can be wrong, and you have to be willing to change no matter what. Okay. So then there's the histories. All right. So now these are all people that wrote histories. What is it? Those which are primarily histories are shown in bold type. The others include short histories or significant historical facts. The best history on horseshoeing in English is Fleming's Horseshoes and Horseshoeing, 1869. Who Fleming was a fabulous man, and that is a great book that you can get. But he also misunderstood Gracie Clark. Okay. He couldn't understand what Bracy Clark was going on about in his preface to his second book, in the fact that he found out finally after 20 years what Coleman had been doing to him the whole time. Okay. Okay, so here's timeline of history. He gives a timeline of history. 4000 BC, first evidence of horse domestication comes from this period in the Eurasian steppes of the Ukraine. 350 or 3500 BC, Tubal Cain, the first blacksmith, a furbisher of every cutting instrument of copper and iron. You know where you find that? Genesis, in the book of Genesis. He was a son of Cain, the first murderer. Figures. Okay, so yeah, first ones to work iron. Where'd they get that knowledge from? 2000 BC, Mesopotamian plaques and correspondence of the kings of Mari provide the first direct evidence of riding horses. 1400 BC, Iron Age begins in Asia. 1184, Trojan War, Trojan horse. 1000 BC, King Solomon had a stable of 40,000 horses and 12,000 horsemen. 600 BC, a bronze buttress from ancient Pompeii. I guess that's of a horse. I don't know. 375 BC, Philip, that's the father of Alexander the Great. Philip of Macedon, father of Father of Alexander the Great, is said to have seized 20,000 Scythian mares. 250 BC, the Celts in Britain, long before the arrival of Caesar, use pieces of iron of certain weights for money. I don't know what that has to do it. Oh, just about iron, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, goes on. Pretty interesting. Da 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 da. Got a timeline of history there. Let's keep going. Okay, we're getting up to the 1900s. Oh, what? Timeline references. Mistakes. And look, anywhere he made a mistake that he knew of, he mentioned that. And then a glossary. Here we go. And then he's got this fabulous, I mean, what a guy. This farrier was a definite scholar, don't you think? Okay, so you think of this. Don't you think by now they should know what the heck they're doing? You know, no, no, us gals had to come along and straighten them out. I don't know if there's any women writers in here, probably not very many, but not that that'd make a difference because women are just as stupid as men. So, and not that people were stupid, it's just that once error is introduced as truth, everybody gets deluded and deceived. And if you got a little bit of error in there or a lot that you think is the truth, then you're always going to overlook. So that's why I say you have to be willing to unlearn and to consider that anything you know or you think you know, that might not be all there is to it. It could be wrong, it could be part wrong, but irregardless, if you have error in there, you're going to make a mistake. You cannot be wrong on anatomy. You can't. See? Okay, so anyway, wanted to share that with you. What time is it? Oh, 2:19. I don't think we're going to go real late today, but if somebody wanted to talk about something else, or if you wanted to talk about, hi, Roberta. Um, if you wanted to talk about something going on with your horse, we can do
I
that.
do,
Okay.
but I don't want to jump in front of anybody if
Well,
somebody's got something to say.
okay. We already talked about Tiffany's horse.
Oh, did
Kathy,
you?
Kathy, are you there still?
Yes, I'm still here. Yep.
Okay. Is there anything that's going on with you or your horse or anything you'd like to add or say or anything like that?
Not today. I'm good.
Okay. Okay. All right, Roberta.
It's
Uh,
it's not pictures or anything. I just have something to say.
okay.
So I don't know if you remember me of several hoof chats, and I did mention it to you the other day that when I trim her frog often, I will sometimes that periopal will
Mm-hmm.
let go and it's mid frog in the middle, right
Yeah.
up above the frog lips, and I can peel that periopal back just a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't sure what I was looking at, but as of today, I'm pretty sure when you pulled that foot out, that it is a cornified frog corum,
Okay.
is what I think I'm looking at, because it is a frog.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the only thing it can be is the corum, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a um, light rust brown color. You can't see the whole thing, but as you pull it back a little bit,
Uh-huh.
the frog lips are smashed, or everything is smashed together.
Okay.
Like just, yeah. It's real hard for me to get even a video or a picture. I have to
Yeah.
have another pair of hands.
Well, let's go look at this picture where that happened to my horse and see if there's some similarities.
Okay.
Let's see here. If I can find it.
Yeah. I
Mm.
searched yesterday evening for pictures in your video on the about this, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't have any luck, but I was going to do it again tonight. See if I can find it.
Okay. Oh, well, I think I got it here. I'll find it.
Okay.
Let's see here. Okay. Well, it's not in that file, so. It's been a while since I looked at any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And my pictures have been kind of rearranged. Oh, I know it's got to be here because I'm seeing some other stuff that's looking familiar. So hold on.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I'm not sure if I want to expose that because she's so bound.
yeah. Let's see here. Share. Just a second here.
Where my head's at is go ahead, continue growing the hoof capsule, get it bigger, grow some heel in, and then,
Yeah.
you know, keep the dorsal, just keep the hoof wall, the shape of the sole, and until, I get all that, and then I'll
Yeah.
address it. Kind of, that's where my head's at
Yeah. Well, that
with
sounds good.
that foot.
So is it anything like
Yeah.
this? See how this is just actually periopal? And
Well,
okay, so what you see here,
yeah.
okay, that is cornified frog corium. And so this is all periopal. That is
Mm-hmm.
not real frog. And it's live. It's live. And it was being fed by this. See it?
Yeah.
How it just filled up that area. And so this is growing from here over there and from in the center here over the whole frog. What do you think?
I'm looking. But I mean, I can literally, but where I pull the periopal, it's like from the apex and go back halfway,
Uh-huh.
and that's where like I can take the periopal at the halfway point and
Okay.
pull it to the side, but up like you are in the
Okay.
back, and I can actually see the frog lips and they're smashed together. I know that's
Okay.
what it is.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm
that
looking
makes
at it
sense.
from the other end.
Well, see, I'd been restoring his heels for a while, kind of when all
Yeah.
this came about, and stuff. And I kept wondering what this hole was. I couldn't figure that out. But
Mm-hmm.
see, his whole frog was covered with periopal. That
Yeah.
that is all periopal.
Mm-hmm.
See, and
Mm-hmm.
now it's so weird though the way this fed that all and kept it alive.
It
So
is. Yeah.
Linda,
yeah.
with that periopal rope, and you said it fed the periopal and kept it alive. What would happen if you just cut across it instead of taking the whole thing out? Because I took it all out on Dolly one time and her heels moved together. The bulbs crowded
Oh
back
yeah.
together.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it out.
So if you just kind of cut across it and cut off the circulation, so to speak, would that accomplish the same thing?
You mean just cut this thing here?
Yeah, just cut across that, and would that cut off the feeding of that part so it would flake off quicker,
Probably
more
out
easily?
of this part, you know. Um, you know, Now, I didn't have a problem with his heels contracting at the time. I wouldn't even have thought about it, you know? Um, so I don't know. I don't know. I know what happened here was I cut that. See, that was so weird. I was so weirded out, you know. So I cut it initially like this, okay? And so then it wound up looking like this. And that's the first time I ever saw and I didn't know what I was looking at then. Now I know that I'm looking at the innermost layer of the frog, which is translucent, and I can see through it to the frog court, to the true frog. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of started trimming it off, and then it wound up looking like that, see? But I mean I had a lot of bar, so this last time when I trimmed a bunch of that out, I had also removed a lot of bar. And so the bars were kind of keeping, I think, the heels from contracting here. But you can also see how my buttresses are so curled in?
Mm-hmm.
Not, and I haven't looked at this for a long time. And so what I'm seeing here is that this buttress is not just curled in. This buttress is curled in that way. See it? It doesn't just come pointing straight like over this way. It comes, it's, see, I was wondering if this happened. And so now looking at this, I'm seeing this as it really is for the first time because I've looked at these after they've come undone quite a bit, and I haven't looked at these photos. And so let me, crying out loud, this is absolutely insane. Just to even know this stuff is nuts. Okay, look at the heel buttress. Should be right here. See, right about there. Instead, it goes in like that. See that?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess they can not just curl in, but curl in like that, which makes total sense because it's all one continuous piece. And so here, um, let's see, close. Do, do, do. Let me undo this. So, and so there's a picture of Bracy Clark. They used to call this the frog band. The periopal band used to be called the frog band. Let me show you a picture of Bracy Clark. A minute here.
What if because the bulbs are bound in that brightmost picture, the
Huh?
buttress curls in much like a flare?
Yeah,
So it's just a really, really deep flare,
uh,
like towards the back end, not towards.
well, well, it's not really a flare. It's literally the whole foot gets bent and curled in.
Okay.
Like literally, as if you were to take each heel and just, if you could take it in your hands and just curl it in and take your heel buttresses and even curl them in to where they're pointing and almost up to the middle of the frog.
Like what you did with the cadaver
Yeah,
and the ball. Got it.
yeah. Um, let's see here. Okay, Bracy Clark. Let's see here. If I can find this picture. Okay. Okay, so looking at, just a minute here. Looking at my horse's foot there on the left, that picture, and you see how that periopal comes from uh, the bulb there in the back, and then it's growing over the whole, each side of the frog, right? Okay, so now look at this. Um, This is a picture of Bracy Clark. This is before he renamed it and called it the periopal band. But it was called the frog band. Now you can understand why it was called the frog band, because look in this picture here. First of all, we can look at this and tell these are false heels, right? Okay, so look at how this curls around and into the foot like that. And so it covers over the whole frog. And so naturally you would think it was part of the frog, right? So look at this bottom one here. The frog detached. Okay. And so they think this is all, they called it the frog band because they thought it was all a part of the frog. And so all of the feet he dissected had the heels trimmed out of them. Have you guys been able to hear me okay?
Yeah, just fine.
Oh, okay. All of the feet he dissected had the heels trimmed out of them. And when the heels are trimmed out, the bulbs, the periopal, and everything curls in, and the periopal grows over the whole frog to hold the hoof capsule on. So then later he found out this was something completely different, and he named it the periopal band instead. So, okay, so back to you, Roberta.
Yep. So, I guess what I will do, my plan is to still trim the frog,
Uh-huh.
but not to get too crazy with it
Okay.
until I get some more heel and a little bit bigger capsule. What do you think?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think, yeah, because she's pretty real bound.
Yeah. And
So,
so you want her to release some, but then again, we want her to have something to release into,
well, that's right.
But
Gotta
at
keep that
least
in my mind.
I kind of want to go visit her feet again while we're here.
Okay. But if I can get Pat while I have her out, I'll get a picture of what I'm talking about. I'll do
Okay.
my best because I really want you guys to see it. It's
Yeah,
the
I want to
only
see it.
thing that it can be because that's the location I'm at.
Yeah. Just a minute here. Okay, so I'm gonna go find your pictures. Which foot is it?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so this is the left. So
Let's see.
and now here's the right.
Yeah.
Right medial. But this foot here is the left. Yeah, okay. So that's the right. Now look at this foot. It looks just like the one we just looked at of Bracy Clark's.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get that foot up again. That's pretty interesting. It looks just like it.
Just like it.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, and I found one I didn't draw on. So let's see. Look at there. I want to take
Look at that.
this foot with a picture of your horse's foot and put them side by side.
Okay.
Okay.
I've decided to anytime I take pictures, I'm
Uh-huh.
always going to have that periopal white. So
Yeah.
she just come out of water. So I know exactly what I'm looking at.
Yeah. That's a good idea. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this up here and this up here. Ah, yeah, this is interesting. Very interesting. Wait till you see this. This is so cool. You know, the only reason we can know this stuff is because of these computers and being able to take all these pictures. You know that? It's not because we're smarter than them people or nothing like that. It's just because what's available, you know, that and obsessive compulsive disorder on horses' feet. So, wow. Okay, now gotta take a picture of this. This is ultra cool. You are seeing what you're seeing. It has to be. So, just a minute here. Where is the, let's see, share. Okay. Look at that. Do you see it? It is the very same thing.
Yep.
That is really cool. Ha! I mean it. It is the same thing. Wow. Look at here. I want to save it. Just a minute here.
That's amazing.
It is, isn't it?
To the T.
Screenshots. Just a minute. Okay. Okay. Just a minute here. What is going on? Oh, well, I'll just put it there. Okay, now I got to open this. Hold on. I want to be able to enlarge it. Okay, just a second here. Ah, what's going on? Okay. Okay. See that? I made it a little bigger. There. That is, I mean, you can see everything. Look at it. Look at how he drew so clearly the periopal band coming around this way, and then you got a little bit of bulb skin right here. Now look at the same thing over here. You got the periopal band coming around this way, and then you got this piece of bulb skin right here. And you know, the heel is exactly the same. Um, uh, now you got a little more flare in the toe right here, but really this and look at the way the periopal band is curved and pulled down kind of in front. Same, it's the same thing. This is amazing. What a great example. You know,
What is
wow.
that thing he has on the coronary band in the quarter?
I
That
don't know
odd
what he
shaped
was
thing.
doing there. Exactly. He cut it and he put something in it for some reason or the other. Now, here's something that it looks like he did not realize at this time. Uh, so this is early. I don't know when the date of this was. Huh.
So this is a drawing of an actual foot that he was looking at, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, one that he would have considered, you know, faithfully representing the horse's foot at the time. Um, and uh, so he's trying to figure out what all this stuff is because really people didn't know a lot about the inner workings of the foot. So, but look, he's got the growth rings. He's got the horn tubules, at least the outer, yeah, pretty much horn tubules. But he didn't know that this part of the cartilage was also a part of the foot, and you find that a lot that Pete Ramey, when he found that wild mare in that cattle guard and he dissected the feet, one of them, he just cut it right off right there at the hairline. See, because they don't know that, I mean, he does now, I believe, but at the time did not realize that this is as much a part of the foot as anything else underneath the hairline, you know. So yeah, I imagine. In fact, it's a given that that's periopal growing over your whole frog. So, but I think that now that you are releasing and eventually mine all came to fruition. I was not totally trimming frogs then like I am now, and I was restoring heel. And uh so I think if you just keep trimming the frog like you are and cleaning things up, um that uh that yeah, that she's gonna have heel coming in right here. As this lifts up and releases this, heel buttress will start to grow here, like what we saw on Tiffany's horse. You could see the wall that was higher up here, but then there was other coming in down here, like just a minute here. Okay, so like as this lifts up, then you're gonna see little pieces like this come. See? And eventually they'll all grow down. I could have had a different color. So you see pieces like this, and this will grow down.
Okay.
You'll see another piece here come out like that, and that'll be growing down, and then another piece here. See how that goes?
Yeah.
It's great to be able to look at this foot and put this together and get this understanding. So look, he cut part of this loose right here, and then he put that thing under it. See? For whatever reason. He's got little numbers on it. I don't know. It's hard to read what he said, you know. So, I want to share something with you about Bracy Clark. Now, one thing I'll share with you is all these barefooters, including this Yahoo, uh, uh, what's his name? Jamie Jackson. Oh, they all mention him. Bracy Clark this, Bracy Clark that, advocate of the natural foot, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, he was against horseshoes. No, he wasn't. Not at all. In fact, he developed different methods and ways of shoeing. You know, he was against the very thing they advocate, frog pressure. See? And so it's so deceptive. So nobody would ever read Bracy Clark and think, well, he just agrees with them. Yeah, he was one of the first vets and blah, blah, blah. No, he was nothing like what they think or what they believe. Everything they believe is in total antithesis to what he believed. They just, all Barefoot did was carry on with the destructive, horrible doctrines of frog pressure and taking down the heels and it kills horses. But isn't that deceptive? Has anybody else seen them, read any of their books, or heard them mention him? They mention him in all their books. Oh, Bracy Clark this. Hildred Strasser mentions him. Jamie Jackson mentions him. All kinds of different people that believe in amputating the heels and forcing frog pressure. It's so deceptive, the whole thing. Now, they don't know they're being deceptive and that they're deluded and deceived by the educational system that is in charge of this. Nobody's doing it on purpose, you know, but it's just the fact. Like, don't you people read? They obviously didn't read him. Um, and I haven't read everything he wrote in detail either. Okay. But I've read enough to know and can prove that what they think and they say is not what he thought and he said, and he was fully against frog pressure and saw it as the main thing that was causing these animals to suffer. Okay, so I want to show you this thing. It's pretty cool. So Bracy Clark was a Quaker. Bracy Clark was a believer in God, and he was a moral good man, unlike Edward Coleman Slimeball, the head of that vet school. So I want to show you something real interesting about him. Just a minute here. Okay, get up here. Okay, let's see. Share. Okay, so you look up Bracy Clark. In order to find this, I accidentally found this other article. Usually you look up Bracy Clark, you're going, huh, oh, just a second. Well, I'm sorry, whoever you are, I can't answer the phone. Potential spam. Just a minute. I can't even see. Okay. Anyway, hold on. Okay, let's put that back. All right, so Bracy Clark, you look him up, you're going to find him in Wikipedia. It's really a short article. See there? This guy wrote more than anybody else on the foot of the horse. So anyway, he lived from 1771 to 1860. So what does that make him? 89 when he died? It just says he was an English veterinary surgeon specializing in the horse. Okay, what's some interesting thing? Clark specialized down here. It says Clark specialized in conditions of the horse's hooves. Um, and anyway, it says, so not a lot about him there, right? But then I found this other article right here. This is Quaker Strong Rooms, a blog from the library of the Society of Friends. And so this is interesting. I want to read this to you. It says, Horses, Bits, and Bots, the writings of Bracy Clark. It says, it's the Chinese Year of the Horse. Not much Quaker material there, you might well think. If you were researching horses, let me enlarge this. If you were researching horses in equine veterinary practice, our library would hardly be your first port of call. You might perhaps have heard of the trouble the Quaker chocolate families got themselves into by owning a racing newspaper which promoted gambling. Yeah, Quakers weren't into gambling, people. Okay, or come across remonstrations against the sport of horse racing from Quakers like Thomas Cash to those inhabitants in and about Wilmslow, who have lately been the cause of great vanity and wickedness by horse races in 1799. But you'd not think there would be much else. However, the library does have in its collections two surprising volumes containing 36 separate and varied works on horses by Quaker Bracy Clark, 1771, born in 1771, died in 1860. As sessioned in 1925, but presented many years earlier by the author to the Friends Tea Room and Library, later called the Friends Institute. This is obviously in England, in Devonshire House. Okay, so they show a picture. They've got one of his original books, and they've got his books, all the books he wrote. And it says the individual items and volumes have recently been added to our online catalog as part of the retrospective cataloging project. Yeah, just a minute. All told, Bracy Clark wrote around 50 treatises on the history, care, disease, and treatment of horses, published from 1807 to the 1840s. Bracy Clark was born to John Clark and Hannah Hutchman of Clipping, Norton, Oxfordshire. His father, a Quaker in the leather trade, died when Bracy was 2. He was educated. Oh, just a second. He was educated at the school run by the Quaker Thomas Huntley at Burford, then apprenticed to another Quaker, Joseph Treasure, a surgeon, during which time he studied Greek. Haha. Okay, that's where the name periopal comes from, people. Greek, chemistry, and natural history, and even started the first cricket club of Worcester. I wonder that's where Worcester sauce gets its name. Okay, he qualified as a veterinary surgeon at the newly established veterinary school in London as a pupil of the eminent Scottish surgeon John Hunter. During his lifetime, Bracy Clark devoted an enormous amount of time and labor to the subject of the horse's foot and horseshoeing. He was a member of the Linnean Society, the Paris Academy of the Sciences, the Natural History Society of Berlin and Copenhagen, the Royal Agriculture Society of Stuttgart, and in 1817 was made an honorary member of the Natural History Society of New York. He was one of those many nonconformist contributors to Abraham Ree's Cyclopedia, published as a weekly serial between 1802 and 1820, writing on the anatomy of horses, bits, bleeding, blindness, blisters, bots, broken wind, canker, corns, curb, and collar. Do all the bad things that go wrong with horses begin with B or C? Okay, so this is one of his books on bots. Holy Hannah. This guy was something else. He was very concerned with the health of horses' hooves, the circulation of blood, how to cure cracked hooves, and particularly new shoeing techniques. See that? New shoeing techniques, barefooters. Okay, why don't you read the book? And again, I haven't read all his stuff, but it's just irritating how the worst of the worst, Hildred Strasser and Jamie Jackson, have the audacity to mention him in their books. It just aggravates the snot out of me. Okay, he was very concerned with the health of horses' hooves, the circulation of blood, how to cure cracked hooves, and particularly new shoeing techniques. For the latter significant discoveries, he was ridiculed by many, including members of the Royal Veterinary College. Shortly before his death, his nephew James Hernard relates, he sold to the Veterinary College of Edinburgh the skeleton of the celebrated undefeated racehorse Eclipse. Eclipse first and the rest nowhere. That was a saying they said about Eclipse, which he kept in his study. Hernard, that's his nephew, went on to write a splendid equine elegy to his uncle, the unsung Hampden of his day. Now, Hampden was I don't know, he was some sort of English hero type guy uh, who fought for something worthy, is what I'm imagining. So, this is what his nephew wrote about him to Bracy Clark. Descendant not unworthy of a sire, the Hampton of the common where he dwelt. A common is like, a hamlet or a village or wherever. Okay, Bracy, this tribute of deep, heartfelt, and honest admiration I desire to offer to thy name. I can't hardly read this thing. The world has dealt unkindly with thee, and the heart must melt to see a genius which could not tire, cramped like the hoof within its iron belt. But so it is, the dead whom we admire, at whose proud tombs past centuries have knelt, were, when alive, the men the world would beat up. And see in chains or banishment expire. One comfort still remains to gild our earth. Men cannot crush the consciousness of worth. See, this guy, I'm telling you, the world was not worthy of him. He was one of those of whom the world was not worthy. And when you read his book and you see how he saw how this frog pressure doctrine was the result of so much suffering, it just moves you, you know. And it says, what a finer tribute to a horse lover. So anyway, wanted to share that with you. I thought that was really great. I think it's really great that they've got his whole collection of books, probably the first editions that originally belonged just to him. So anyway, wanted to share that with you. Pretty interesting. He even wrote a book, or well, he was an inventor. Okay, so he invented a heater that poor people could put in their apartments. How cool is that? Say, he was just a really, really honorable truth seeker. See, okay. Well, anyway, that's all I have for today. And I'll go cry in my corner now. Yeah, whatever. All right. So, does anybody else have anything to say?
Well, how's the pony?
Mine?
Yep.
Oh, oh,
Sorry.
she's doing okay.
Is she?
Yeah, yeah, she's doing okay. I've been working with some uh other little boots that I got, and she's doing good.
Has she expanded more, or
A little
has
bit.
is
Yeah, a
so
little
she's
bit.
not completely opened up in the back?
Not completely.
Expanded?
I don't know if she ever will,
I see.
but she gets around good and she's
Yeah.
happy and
Well, that's all that
stuff
matters.
like that. So,
Okay.
if it seems like with her, I always learned everything that would have made a difference for her after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I learned it for others. So, you know, but I just don't know if her feet will ever be totally straightened out,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um,
Because of the coronary band groove.
um, uh, yes, that because of the amount of rotation and primarily because the dorsal wall will not go down and connect to the sole.
Right.
That, if I knew what I knew now, then I never ever would have messed with those toes. But you see, that's what happens to a lot of horses, okay, that are foundered and rotated. They start thinking, oh, well, I got to make that foot look semi normal, because the toes will absolutely shoot forward when you start unbounding the back of that foot. And you just cannot mess with that.
Well,
You
yeah.
gotta, yeah, you gotta wait till you got the back of that foot established. And if you gotta put up with a little flare in that toe and stuff like that, oh well.
So
You
big.
know, that's why I was always so uh, cautious with
Mm-hmm.
Cheyenne, you know, and stuff like that because I had learned that, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Well, that's what the vet did with Apache Girl. I hadn't found you yet, and I put her down.
Hmm.
Well, two things. One, the vet put her on her hoof stand and treated her like a block of wood, and
Yep,
took that file and just straight up and down and filed that hoof back to nothing.
yep,
But I kept. She rotated in all fours, foundered, and I put her in a round pen, and she was so compromised. This is what I think. There was nothing in that lot to do this, but she started leaking joint fluid out of the fetlock.
oh, that, my goodness.
So
Yeah,
nothing in that lot to pierce that skin.
yeah,
Yikes.
Oh
geez.
yeah. And she's like, "Did you do anything with her?" I'm like, "No." And what she said to me was, since it's seeping out of the skin there at the joint, she's like, what happens is severe arthritis sets up pretty quick. She's
Yeah.
like, it's
Oh,
about quality. And so I just put her down. I wasn't going to have her suffer, but
yeah,
I'm kind of now I think about it quite a bit. I, well, she always had her heels trimmed out, and I'm
yeah,
always wondering if, the big if.
yeah, yeah. I know I had a horse. Somebody just gave him to us. He's a really well-bred horse. And he was lame, and I thought, but that was when I was trimming heels out too, and I thought I could fix him, but I never could.
Yeah.
And frankly, we just couldn't afford to feed him, and I couldn't find anybody to take him, so I eventually had to put him down. But I know that if I knew then what I know now, it would have been a whole
Yeah,
different story,
absolutely.
Isn't that how it is with everything, though? If we knew
isn't it?
then what we know now, we would do so many things differently.
No kidding.
We do the best we can at the time with the knowledge we have.
That's right. That's right. You
That's
know,
right. So,
so
but yeah. Well, I thank you, Miss Linda.
Well, thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tiffany, Kathy, Marilyn, and stuff. So I think, I want to write that book, right? But I'm having kind of a hard time getting started. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it verbally and then have it put in writing and then edit it. So I may start um another uh another another live thing on YouTube where I just go through everything and do like an hour a day verbal and then get the whatchamacallit. What is it?
Transcription?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Couple of really good hoof chats when you explain to a newcomer why you started and then the history of it. Maybe you
okay.
could start with having AI transcribe those previous hoof chats because they were really, really, really good.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I will do that. Thank you for the suggestion. Well, okay, guys. Think you're awesome. Love y'all, and God bless you and your horses, and help us all learn to trim better and understand these feet. Okay, we'll talk to you next week or during the week here sometime.
Thank
Okay,
you, thank you, thank you.
you
Thank
betcha. Thank you,
you.
and
Thank
signing out.
you.
Okay, bye bye.
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 Let's see.
Now I'm stuck in here. I always gotta, you'd think I'd remember how to get out of here. I can't even, oh, there we go. Stop share. And then I'm gonna go over here